Okay, thanks everyone for joining in. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. So if you haven't got a glass of water or a cup of tea or anything that you might need for the next 45 minutes, pen and paper, you've got a couple of minutes to go and grab something. Otherwise, you can just twiddle your thumbs for a couple of minutes. If anyone knows any jokes, you could pop them into the chat box and I can share them with people. I'm not very good with jokes. In fact, my husband tells me I'm terrible with jokes. Okay, a couple of minutes. Where's everybody from? I'm in Brisbane and it's 36 degrees outside. So I'm very grateful for the air conditioning in my office. Oh, here we go. We have a joke. What do you get when you cross a snake and a kangaroo? From Michaela. I have no idea. Oh my God. Anybody know? What do you get when you cross a snake and a kangaroo? I'm going to tell you, a skipping rope. Okay, that's good. It's a bit of a dad joke. I do like those. Okay, so where is everyone from? I've just mentioned I'm in Brisbane. I know from the list of people that there's at least one other Brisbane person here. I'm not sure whether you're all dying of heat like I am. Oh, some Sydney people, hello. You've got rain today. We're getting a weather of 25 degrees tomorrow and I cannot wait. I don't think it's been that cool since God knows how long ago, ages and ages and ages. Okay. Well, it's by my clock it's 2 o'clock, so we'll get started. Just would like to say thank you very much to all of you for giving me some of your time this afternoon. I really appreciate you joining into this webinar. If for any reason you need to leave early, that's completely fine. You'll get a copy of the recording tomorrow, so just in case, yeah. So if you have any questions or if you have any tech issues throughout the chat or throughout me talking, just type into the chat box and I'll try to address those. I will leave some time at the end for questions, so if you've got questions, either just pop them in the Q&A or pop them in the chat box and I'll get to those at the end. So my plan is that I'll talk for about 45 minutes. I'll probably talk for about 30-35 minutes and then we'll have about 10 minutes at the end for questions. So if we do, I've allowed an hour for this, but if we do need an hour, then that's great. But if we don't, then we can all have a bit of an early mark before our next meetings, for those of us who have next meetings today. So there's a few of you from Sydney, a few from Brisbane. Do we have anyone further afield? I love to know where people are from. So one of my first questions as well is, what's one of the hardest things that you find about social media, particularly when it comes to providing customer experience? Again, just pop something in the chat box. If there's anything, tone of voice. Yeah, tone of voice. Developing engaging subject lines. Yeah, that's one that's quite difficult for many people, Michaela. Hannah has said tone of voice. Tone of voice is really, really tricky. I might write a blog post on that actually over the next couple of weeks, because as we know, it's really difficult to convey tone, and it can be really difficult to convey emotion in the written word. A really good example is my husband and I are both on Twitter, and a few years ago he was just paying me out. We were in the same room. I was on the couch, he was sitting at the dining table, we were watching some bad TV show, and we were on Twitter making bad jokes at each other's expense. And one of my mates who didn't know Sean, and we've got different names, different last names, so a lot of people don't know that we are connected. And one of my friends sent me a message and said, "Who's this Sean dude who's hassling you? Do I need to beat him up?" And I responded and said, "No, he's my husband. He just doesn't quite know yet that tone of voice doesn't come across on in the written word, particularly on Twitter and on other forms of social media. So we were killing ourselves with laughter, but I showed that to Sean, and it really made him realise that you do need to be very careful about what you say, because it's very difficult to interpret the written word. It's particularly one of the things about tone of voice is if the person who's reading the message is having a really bad day, then they can interpret something positive as a negative. So you all know, I'm sure, what it's like when you're in a really bad mood, or somebody's just pissed you off and they've sent you an innocent email, or you've seen something innocent and you've just looked at it and gone, no, and you've just seen a flash of red go across your eyes. And you've totally often misinterpreted. So it's just, yeah, it's important to just be conscious of that. I can talk a bit more about tone of voice at the end if we've got some time. So just remind me if I forget. Otherwise, I will write a blog post about it, because that is a really important thing. Okay, so we might get started. We've got quite a few people who've joined in, so thank you again to those of you who've joined in the last couple of minutes. I'm really grateful for your time. For those of you who've been on my webinars before, you know that I give real information and it's not a giant sales pitch. I will have a little sales pitch at the very end because I finished my book, and I'm just going to show you a photo of it and let you know where you can buy a copy of it if you're interested. So it's called The Social Association. It's specifically written for associations and nonprofits on how to use social media to increase member engagement, generate a return on investment, and create a thriving online community. But it is relevant for any organisation who's feeling a little bit challenged by social media. And I do have a good section in it on tone and voice. So Hannah, if you are interested, then that might be something to think about buying. But I won't talk about that anymore right now. We'll just get on with the topic, which is using social media to improve the customer experience. I do know that there's a few of you who have joined who do work for associations. So whenever I say the word customer, just think of the word member, because I do use them interchangeably in these webinars and in a lot of what I do, because I think some of you know that I do a lot of work with associations, and I'm very interested in how you can work to improve the member experience, but also to demonstrate the value through social media of being a member within your association. So one of my absolute favourite quotes is this one from Maya Angelou. She said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And that is, so important today, because I really believe that customer satisfaction and the customer experience is something that can really set you apart from your competitors. If you become known for creating an excellent customer experience or member experience, then that really does become your unique selling point. So have a think about, there's a brand in the US called Zappos shoes, and they are known for their excellence in customer service. So when we finish this, Google Zappos and have a listen to, have a look and see what their reputation is, because they're known for their excellence in customer service. And one of the things that they're known for is if they can't provide you with what you want, they will refer you to a competitor. Now, how incredible is that from a customer service and a customer experience perspective? And one of the reasons that Zappos has such a great reputation is because they make people feel good, and people remember that. It's one of the things that I refer to with engaging customers is people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And it takes a long time to get to know, like, and trust people. So have a think about, in your world, who are the people that you do business with, and why do you do that? Why do you choose them? So you probably choose them because you've gotten to know them, you've gotten to like them, and you've gotten to trust them. And it's a little bit like when we fall in love. So this is my husband and me some time ago. So when you fall in love, you know, you don't marry the first person that you meet on the first day that you meet them, unless you're on that horrible reality TV show that my husband loves, by the way. If you follow him on Twitter, he's been live tweeting it for the last couple of days, which is horrifying to me, but he loves it. But when you do fall in love, or when you do, you know, start dating somebody, you might be single for a while, and then you might just think, yeah, okay, I'm kind of ready to start dating again. So you'll go out and you'll meet people, or you'll sign up to an online dating site, and then you'll start to have a look and you'll see who's out there. Is there anybody that interests me? If there is, then you might go on a couple of dates. If you really like somebody, you might go on more dates. And then before you know it, you know, you've fallen in love and you're either moving in together or you're getting married. You might have a couple of kids, but that takes time. So building relationships and building engagement on social media is the same. It's exactly the same philosophy. You start out, you're not doing anything, you're not on social, there's no value to you, and there's no value to anybody else from a social media perspective because you're not there. And then you might think, okay, what's this social media thing that everybody's talking about? And so you jump on Facebook and you might sign up to Facebook, or you might sign up to Twitter or Instagram, and you'll start having a look and you'll start observing and you'll start learning and you'll start to see what are other people doing and what is the value here to me, and what can I learn from this? And then once you've started to observe, you might then start to broadcast. And broadcasting is when you start sharing your own content, you're promoting yourself. There's a little bit of engagement happening because some people might like what you're saying and they might respond, or they might like your posts on Facebook, or they might share them or retweet them. But you're not engaging with them. It's just one-way communication, a little bit like when you used to send a media release out to a paper and hope that they would print it. That's what this broadcasting level is about. It's a little bit spammy because you're just sending things out. And then you move up the ladder a little bit further and you move to the conversation level, where you start to have conversations with people, and communication moves from being just a one-way communication to two-way conversations. And real engagement starts happening because people start to know you and they start to have conversations with you. And, you know, you can really get to know your customers or your members at this stage because they share things with you. You might ask them questions, they might answer you, they might ask you questions. And in this stage, the conversations don't have to only be work-related. They can be social. So some of the best conversations I've had with people who have become clients have started out where we've been talking about, current events or things that are happening in our lives. You know, I had this really interesting conversation with a couple of people around, well, we have conversations about weather, we have conversations around food, but, you know, conversations around American politics, conversations around what's happening in our worlds, conversations around, when The Voice first started, there were lots of conversations around that, lots of conversations around reality TV. And it helps people to get to understand who you are at a human level, because we always need to be remembering that people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So, and we also need to remember that social media is called social media. It's not called sales media. It's not called spam people with as much stuff as we can media. It's called social. So the more we can be social, the better off we'll be. And you know what it's like once you start having conversations with people in the real world and you get to know them, you build up a relationship. And whether that's, you know, a romantic relationship or a new friendship with somebody, or a relationship, you know, a professional relationship with colleagues in the workplace, or with clients, or with suppliers, or even whether it's just a relationship. Like, I have a relationship with my dentist. I've been seeing my dentist for about 14 years. And I know whenever I go in and see her, she says to me, where have you traveled to recently? Because she knows I travel a lot. And I say to her, how's your daughter? And have you been back to Scotland? Because that's where she grew up. So we have this little personal banter, and we're not friends, but I like her. And I actually really trust her with, doing dental things in my mouth, because I've gotten to know her over the years. And also she's a really good dentist, and she helped me get over my absolute terror of dentists the first time I went to see her with a cracked tooth. So, but, if she hadn't made me feel at ease that first time, I would have never gone back, let alone gone back every 6 months for 14 years. So you've really got to think about, how can we start getting onto social media and having conversations so that people can get to know us, like us, and trust us, because that's when our engagement is amplified. So from an accounts perspective, have a think about who is going to manage your social media accounts. Are you just going to have, so if you're an association, are you just going to have your corporate accounts with your association name? Or will your CEO have their own account in their name? Or will members of your board or members of your executive also have their own accounts in their name? And if they do, then what are some of the opportunities that they've got to share information about your association and what you do, but also to be building individual and personalized relationships with your members. So, they can be sharing some common interests that will help your members get to know you on more of a personal level. Some of the content that you might want to be sharing from an association level or from a corporate level are things like, what happens behind the scenes? What are some of the things that you celebrate? What are some of the, what do you do? What's a day in the life of your association like, or your organisation? If you run events, then do a few behind the scenes event posts, because people are fascinated by that. I remember after the G20 in Brisbane, the Brisbane Convention Centre did a Facebook post that said, over the last week, we've cooked this many meals, we've gone through this many loaves of bread, we've cooked this many prawns. And I just found that fascinating. And people love that sort of trivia, which isn't necessary, which might be trivia to you, but it's quite interesting to other people. Does that all make sense? Okay, I know you can't answer me, but hopefully it does. If you've got any questions, don't forget, just type them into the chat box or into the Q&A, and I can get to them at the end. So the next thing that we need to remember is that organisations that use social media to engage positively with their customers have a higher rate of trust. And again, this comes back to the refrain that I give over and over again: people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And one of the things that's really, really interesting is that an article I read recently in Harvard Business Review said that organisations high in trust report a 76% greater engagement. So if you have a higher level of trust because you've taken the time to get to know your members or your customers, then they're going to be more engaged with you. And when you have that greater level of engagement, then they're going to be more inclined to give you repeat business. The other thing that this Harvard Business Review article said is that organisations high in trust also have 50% more productivity within their organisation and significantly less stress from the people that are in the organisation. So just have a think back to the times when you've, maybe you worked in an organisation. I know I've worked in organisations where there was a really bad culture and people were just gloomy and down and out and, really weren't happy. And one of the reasons, and that lack of interest and happiness and that poor culture stemmed from staff not trusting management. So when the staff didn't trust management, productivity went down, sales went down, because customers know when you're not, when you don't have that trust within your organisation. So we know that customer service is really quickly overtaking price and product as a key brand differentiator. And customer experience is essential. Customer experience is more than just customer service. It's all of the little things that lead to the positive interaction that a customer has with your organisation. And one of the reasons this is really important is because it costs significantly more to get a new customer than it does to keep an existing one. And more and more and more, as I've just mentioned, people decide how they feel about your business based on the customer experience. So customer experience, it's kind of like that elusive X factor. You know what it's like when it's great, and you know what it's like when it's really, really awful. But when it's mediocre, it's kind of hard to explain. And again, I'm just going to go back to my dating analogy. When you go on an amazing date with someone who just instantly piques your interest, you just want to tell everybody about it. When you go on a date that's truly horrendous, you just want to tell your friends about it. But when you go on a date that's really average and your friends say to you, how was it? You're like, oh yeah, it was all right. And there's nothing really to report. Well, it's the same with the customer experience. You want your customers to be saying, wow, it was amazing. It was everything about this experience was incredible. Sorry, it's going to grab a quick little sip of water. The other thing we need to remember is that if your customers aren't happy with you, then they'll tell a lot of people that they've had a bad experience with you or that they're not happy with the services that you provide. But on the flip side, if your customers have a positive experience, then they're also going to tell people. So a lot of people think that negativity is the only thing that's communicated with friends and shared with people, but that's really not true. Because a lot of people, in fact, a greater number of people will share a positive experience than customers that will have a negative experience. However, if people have a bad experience with you, then they're far more likely just to leave and take their wallets somewhere else. So one of if you look at the diagram that's on the screen, you can see to make a great experience, you've got to have service, you've got to provide opportunity, and you have to have conversations. And if you look at the intersections of these, between service and opportunity, then you've got a great experience. You've got great opportunity to provide individualized experience with people. And I've got some examples that I'll run through in a minute. And then again, opportunity and conversation is that great opportunity chance you have to really be communicating with your customers and your members. And then the intersection between service and conversations is where you can genuinely engage. So have a think about, what is it that you're doing in your organisation? Where are your opportunities to provide individualised service? Where are your opportunities to be communicating specifically and individually with people, and where are your opportunities to engage? I'm in a Facebook group for frequent flyers, and a couple of conversations in the last couple of days have reminded me of an experience that my parents had a few years ago. It was their 40th wedding anniversary, and they were going to Europe to visit some of Dad's family and to have a holiday. And they had enough frequent flyer points to upgrade from economy class to business class. So with Qantas, so they applied, they got the upgrade, and they were sitting in business class. And the flight attendant said to Mum, "Mrs. Kettle, how are you enjoying your flight so far?" About 2 hours in. And Mum said, "Oh, it's just so wonderful." She said, "My husband and I have never flown business class before, and we thought we'd treat ourselves because it's our 40th wedding anniversary." And the flight attendant said, "Oh, congratulations. That's absolutely wonderful. Have a great flight." So she did, and he went away. A couple of hours later, he came back to her and he said, with a bottle of, he came back to her and he said, "I'd like to offer you and your husband some champagne, complimentary vintage champagne. Would you like a glass to help you celebrate?" And Mum said, "Oh, that's lovely, but I don't drink alcohol when I fly because I get too dehydrated. So thank you, but no thank you." And so then at the end of the flight, he came to her again and he had a bottle of vintage champagne, vintage Moet. And he said to her, I'd like to give this to you to say happy anniversary and thank you for choosing to fly with Qantas. Now, my mother, who would have talked to anybody and who never expected anything from anybody, but was very generous and kind and loving to everybody, was absolutely dumbfounded and said, I can't believe that you've done this. Thank you so much. But you can imagine that she told every single person she pretty much ever met afterwards, whenever they mentioned anything to do with flying, travel, aircraft or Qantas, about this experience. And she certainly told every single person who said to her, how was your holiday? Because she was just so blown away by this very small gesture on their part, but very large gesture on her part, that Qantas went to just create this incredible experience that surprised and delighted her. Dad was happy as well, but he travelled a lot more and expected a lot more, whereas Mum was totally just blown away. So think about how can you do little things? And, this was a little thing for Qantas, but it was a huge thing for Mum. So think about some of the small things that you can do for your members and your customers that really make them think, wow, they really do care, because that's what creates an incredible customer experience. Another example, and I love this example, is Della Mano brownies. So a couple of years after Mum and Dad had this amazing trip to Europe, my mother very unexpectedly died of heart disease. And so I put on Twitter, I can't believe it, Mum's just died, whatever else I said. And Deb, who's the owner of Della Mano brownies, messaged me and said, would your father like some chocolate brownies? Does he eat chocolate? Can I send you something to say thank you? And I'd never met Deb. I'd been a big fan of her brownies because I'd eaten them when I'd bought them when they used to be at the farmers markets in Brisbane, but we'd never met. And I said to her, that's lovely, thank you, but I'm not in Brisbane. And so thank you, but no, because thinking it would be too difficult for me to get them. And she said, that's fine, just give me your postal address and I'll have some sent down. So 2 days later, a box of brownies and a few other goodies turned up in the post for Dad with the most beautiful, heartfelt written and handwritten card from Deb. And I just thought, wow, that's a customer experience that I never expected, because I don't know you. Even though we'd built a relationship on Twitter and we'd tweeted each other for a year or so, mainly about how much I loved her brownies and how much we both loved chocolate, but I didn't ever expect anything like that. And that was, 7 years ago. And since that time, I talk about her and I give that example every single opportunity I have. I've lost count of how many boxes of brownies I've bought as corporate gifts because of that small gesture that she did so naturally. So again, it was a really small thing to her, but it was a really big thing to me. So again, think about the positive actions that you can have. Now, these have been offline actions, but they've started from an online relationship that's been built. And that's what social media is incredible for. It allows you to build online relationships so that you can then do things offline, or you can do things online as well. Now, another example of a customer experience that was not so happy was a couple of, last year, my friend Kirsten wanted to buy a new car. And she lives in a town on the mid-coast of New South Wales, which I'm not going to name, but they have a Toyota dealership, and she went to buy her car there. They tried to screw her over. They tried to, who knows why, it's just such a hideous story. But at the end of the day, they gave her a contract to sign. She read the contract and said, oh, hang on, this isn't what we verbally agreed. And they said, no, but it's all we're going to do for you, which basically meant she was paying an extra $2,000 for this car to get the features that she wanted that they'd negotiated verbally the day before in a conversation. So she said, that's not good enough, told her mechanic, and her mechanic said, bugger them, let's just go to another Toyota dealership in another town where I know the principal and he'll honour that first deal. So that's what she did. And this is the text message that she got from the first person who was angry, to say the least, that she had stabbed them in the back and gone to another dealer to buy a car, even though he tried to screw her over in price. And, there were a lot of racist comments that were made when she was there with her sister. And, it was just a really horrible experience. Now, I have said to her, can I just name and shame, please, please, please? And she said, no, please don't. But it gets better because she's a teacher in a local school and she teaches one of the children of the person who sent this text to her. So can you imagine, that's a customer experience that's hideous and she will never go to them again. So think about the impact of, what you're doing all the time. One of my favourite people, I guess, when it comes to customer service is this man on the screen, Mark Schaefer. Mark speaks at Social Media Marketing World, which is a social media conference in the US that I go to, or that I've gone to a couple of times. And this presentation that he gave, I think it was last year, he said, one of the things that we need to do with social is we need to be more human. And we need to be more human in every engagement and in every comment. And we really need to be demonstrating, we need to be showing that humanity. And it comes back to tone of voice as well. Show empathy, show compassion, show through the words that you use and the feeling that you impart when you write messages to people, that you do understand what they're going through, whether it's good or bad. So one of the things, be more human. If you're listening on social media and reading some posts and you can see people commenting on different things that are going on in their lives, then make a comment on that. If you can see that one of your members or that one of your customers has just achieved a milestone, whether it's a personal milestone or a professional milestone, congratulate them. If they've tweeted something or shared something on Facebook that's, sad, then offer them empathy. If they've shared an experience or if they've got questions or, just share your personality, whether it's your individual personality, if you're tweeting or if you're using social media as an individual, or whether it's your brand personality, if you're using it as a brand. And what I mean by if you're using it as a brand and showing your personality, then show your brand attributes through the posts that you create. So if you have brand attributes of, integrity and honesty and kindness, then use those, make sure that what you post on social media embodies those, not just with your words, but with your actions on social as well. It's really, really important that with everything that we do, that we don't just tell people that we value them. We want to show people that we value them. And that example that I gave from Deb from Del Hermano, that just really demonstrated to me how much she values her customers because of that simple gesture that she did. One of the things that we talk about is we want to talk about how can we surprise and delight people. Because when you surprise and delight people, they will remember you. I've had a couple of conversations recently with a couple of friends to do with a couple of associations that I'm involved with. So the first one was a friend of mine sent me a message saying, my membership for this association, which I'm not going to name, is about to expire. And I don't get any value from it. So I don't know whether or not I should rejoin. I don't want to rejoin, but I kind of feel this obligation to. A second friend who was a part of this conversation said, I've never joined, even though I've thought about it. And the first friend said, you haven't missed out on anything. Now, this is an association that they say they value their members, but there's not a lot that they do to actually demonstrate that value. So they don't ring you to see how you're doing. They don't call you to let you know about events or activities that are on. They don't ring you when it's obvious that you've just had a professional milestone because you've been sharing it all over LinkedIn. They don't really follow their members on social media, so they won't actually get to see what their members do. Conversely, another association that I'm a member of, the Professional Speakers Association, I had another friend say to me she's thinking about joining it. Could she have my opinion, because she's just not sure as to whether or not it's going to be the right thing for her. And she also wanted to know what value I got from it, because she knew that I'd been a member for quite a number of years. So I said to her, these are the things that I get from it. I go to local events and they're great. I've gone to the National Congress a couple of times. They used to have a mastermind group which I joined, which was fantastic. There's amazing online and offline networking opportunities. They're really active on social media, and the whole of the state committee and the national committee are on social media, and the president is, the current president is really, really supportive of new members and wants to encourage people to grow their speaking careers, and he gives his time to make sure that we do. And he also will respond to you on Twitter and on Instagram, and he personally follows as many members as he can. So this person then said to me, that's fantastic. You've helped convince me to join. I've spoken to 4 or 5 other people who are also members of this association, and they've all said the same thing. So that's just another way, these 2 organisations are a similar size. They have similar financial backing. They've got similar numbers of people involved, but one of them makes their members feel really loved and one of them doesn't. So think about, and the one that makes the members feel loved achieves that because it's the number one priority, is that their members feel loved and that their members feel listened to. And there's a number of things that they post, particularly in the Facebook group, which is just for members. And the post will start off with saying, our members have asked us to do X, and so here we are. And one of the things that members have been asking for was, can you give us a commentary or a bit of an update as to what is said and what happens at the board meetings? And so they put an update, like they put a condensed version of the board minute of the minutes of every board meeting on Facebook for every member to have a look at. So they're very transparent about what's going on so that we all get that sense of what's going on. So think about what are some things like that that you can do for your customers and your members. Another one of my favourite examples of surprising and delighting is this example here. Eric is quite a well-known speaker in the United States, and he stayed at a hotel for a conference a little while ago, a couple of years ago, and on the reservation form he said, I wonder what will happen if I just fill in the reservation extra request box where I'd like a picture of a pickle and a piece of chocolate. And so the Manchester Grand Hyatt in San Diego left him this note with a picture of a pickle, some crayons for him to colour in, and a chocolate bar. Now, that is surprising and delighting. But it gets better, because another hotel that he stayed at a week or so later one-upped them by leaving him a gift box that said, Mr. Tung, we heard you liked pickles and chocolate, so here you go. And here's a gift voucher as well for our dining, to use in our facilities while you're staying here. And he says, he tweets a picture of this and says, I think they've won up to the Grand Hyatt, but the hotel that provided him with this gift box said, no, there's no one-upping. They inspired us. We love seeing great hospitality provided. So think about, this happened because the residents in Amelia, the second hotel he stayed at, they watch and they know who their customers are. And they, I don't know whether they have on their reservation form, what are your social media handles? But if you're a hotel, what a great opportunity that is to start engaging with people on social before you actually stay. A couple of years ago, I was traveling to Sydney a lot for work, and I stayed in a hotel near Town Hall, which my client booked me into. It was a 1-bedroom apartment, and it was everything about the process just impressed me. The bed was phenomenally comfortable. I slept so well. I slept through my alarm. The room was a great layout. the whoops, you can see this is where the plug was for my laptop, so I could easily get into it and not have to go crawling around underneath the desk in a tight skirt to try to plug in. But and the room service meal I had was incredible. It was one of the best room service meals I've ever eaten in the hotel. So at the end of my stay, I tweeted, I just had a great stay at this hotel. I didn't tag them on Twitter. I just sort of wrote their name and said, if you're in Sydney and you're looking for somewhere good value to stay at, give this place a go. A couple of days later, they sent me an email saying, thank you so much. We'll upgrade you the next time you stay. And I'm like, wow, that was just a really lovely, thoughtful gesture that surprised me and delighted me. Unfortunately, they upgraded me to a room on a higher floor and I couldn't look out the window because it was too high up and I got vertigo. So I had to keep the curtains closed the whole time, but that wasn't their problem. That was my problem. So, and I was too shy to say, I don't like this room. Can I have one on the ground floor, please? But, you know, their gesture was very much appreciated. So we need to remember that better service isn't unique, but better experience is. One of my favourite campaigns is this one by General Electric. They ran a campaign a few years ago called Healthy Something. I've forgotten what it was called exactly, but it was basically Healthy Share. They chose their members they chose people that were tweeting things in the United States around health and lifestyle, and they sent them gifts. So they got their address, they asked them for their address and said, we'd like to send you a present. And then they sent them either a yoga mat or a basketball or a box of nuts, or there was another gift that was in the mix as well. And the idea behind all of the gifts is that they could be shared with somebody, because they realised that it's a lot easier to develop a good exercise and healthy lifestyle habit if you're doing it with somebody else, so they can help you stay accountable. This campaign would have cost them probably, I don't know, a bit of money and quite a bit of effort in terms of organising it. But the impact that it had on their brand awareness was quite significant. So think about, are there small campaigns that you can run, or large campaigns, depending on your size, that surprise and delight your customers and your members? Friends of mine in the US recently went to see a new dentist, and they got this note from him after their experience. They said, just a note to say thanks very much for popping in or for coming into our office for your dental appointments. If you have any questions, give us a call. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never had a thank you card from a healthcare professional, ever. This surprised and delighted, and you can guarantee that they're going to go back again and again and again. I've talked about this again. I stayed at the Hilton. I went to I don't even know what it was, something I went to at the Hilton on the Gold Coast. And when I got into my room, I had this gift, which was absolutely lovely. If they had followed me on Twitter, they would realise that I don't really eat a lot of sweet stuff, but my husband was delighted when I took the macaron home for him. But, you know, again, it was a really thoughtful gesture that said to me, they're really grateful that I've chosen to stay at their hotel when there's how many hundreds of others on the Gold Coast that I could have chosen to stay at. And this example as well, this again is something really small that you can do online, doesn't cost any time, just requires a little bit of social listening. This is a tweet that I sent out a couple of years ago when I was reading a book that made me cry on the train. And Queensland Rail, you know, I didn't tag them in the post, I just said I was on the train. This is what they responded to me: will you require tissues? And I just thought, wow, that's really, really thoughtful, and not something that I would have ever expected from Queensland Rail. So think again, what are little things you can do to be building engagement with your customers? This is a great example of what not to do. I don't know if you are familiar with the story of United Breaks Guitars, but go and Google the DVD once we finish and Google the story. It's a great story. This musician in the US called Dave was flying on United, and he watched the airline crew throwing guitars and throwing luggage. And he just thought, oh my God, they're going to break my guitar. Sure enough, his guitar was broken. So he tried for about a year to contact United to get some sort of covering of costs for the damage done to his guitar, which he's got a guitar that is probably, I don't know, worth $7,000 or $8,000. The repair costs were $2,000. He said to United, you can just give me travel vouchers. I don't care. You haven't got to give me cash. Just give me $2,000 worth of air tickets because I fly all the time. And they didn't. So a year later, he wrote this little song called United Breaks Guitars. And it's absolutely hysterical with a video. So go and Google it and you'll see it'll come up really on the top first page of Google when you do. And you can watch this video and listen to the lyrics where it goes on about how United didn't seem to care about their customers. They didn't care when he tried to call them to let them know, and they broke his guitar. So when this, you can see down the bottom that this has been viewed nearly 18 million times. When it had 200,000 shares and views, United rang him and said, what do we have to do for you? What do we have to give you for you to take that video down? Now, there was no apology. It was just, we don't like what this is doing to our brand reputation. So now what can we do for you to take it down? So obviously he said, nick off, there's nothing. And he's since wrote 2 other songs about how United broke his guitar. So this, every time I see a brand or see an organisation doing something really poor in the interest of their customers, whether it's one customer or whether it's multiple customers, I think of this. And I think if you don't, and if they had treated him better, if they had even said, I'm really sorry, he would never have written this song. But they didn't even say that. So think about, what is it that how can you engage and how can you make your customers and your members feel better about what you do? And it really often is just as simple as saying thank you. Another example that I love is with my friend Amanda. Amanda runs a company called The Bubble Diva, and she also runs a company called The Truffle Man. And these 2 businesses involve her shipping champagne, glasses, and French food delicacies, truffles, etc., around Australia. And she said she went down to her local Pack and Send a while ago and said, look, can you help me? The company that I'm using is not really working for me because a lot of the champagne and a lot of the glassware that I'm sending is arriving broken. And my customers aren't happy and it's costing me a lot of money because I then have to resend it. So what can you do for me? So they said, no worries, leave it with us. So she started to use Pack and Send. After a few months, she went back to them to say, hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate how you're looking after my products that I'm selling because I have not had a single complaint since I started to send with you. And they said, wow, that's great. And by the way, tell us more about your business because we think this is a great story. And they used her for a national advertising campaign to promote the Pack and Send business. So that is just a really simple thing that you can, a really big impact for her business. But again, it came about from something as small as her saying thank you. So think again, how can you show gratitude? How can you demonstrate how can you show your customers and your members that you value them? And it doesn't need to be a big thing. It doesn't need to be a big gift. It doesn't need to be discounts on your products or discounts on your services. You don't need to be giving things away. Often it's just having conversations. It's just, saying, oh, I know you had a baby 6 months ago. Are you getting any sleep yet? Or, hey, I hear you got engaged. Congratulations. Or, I hear that you've just been promoted. Congratulations. Simple things that surprise and delight. So one of the things I'd love you to do is just go away and maybe write down or maybe even share with me in the chat box, and I can share it with the other people on the call, some of the things that you could really easily do to your customers and your members that would increase engagement with them. And while you're having a think about what that might be, I'm just going to show you a picture of me holding my book proof because I'm very excited. This is being printed at the moment and I'll have it next week. And if anyone has any questions, now's the time. I did have a couple of questions sent to me. One of the questions that was sent to me is, social media seems really good at promoting events, but it doesn't necessarily convert to ticket sales. There's a whole lot of things that I can talk about here, and actually, rather than going into too much detail at the moment, I think I'll do a webinar on social media and using social media to promote events. Is that something that you would be interested in? Those of you on the call, yes, 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 yes. Great, 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 great. Okay, I'll pop you on my mailing list and let you know when the next ones will be, but I will schedule that in 2 or 3 webinars time. The next webinar that I do will be on, I don't know what the next one will be, but the one in March will be on what I've learned from Social Media Marketing World, which I'm going to in a couple of weeks. So maybe the April one will be on promoting events. That might work actually. Yeah, we'll do that. But before I finish, I'd just like to say thank you again. If you have any questions, we've got a few minutes, so type them in the box. If you do want to learn more about social media, you can buy a copy of my book. It's $29.95 plus shipping. If you just go to my website, melkettle.com, and you'll see it on the homepage, and you can order a copy there. I'm also soon to be launching my next online group mentoring program. So if you're interested in that, just let me know and I can send you some details. If you would like me to come and talk to you about how I could work with your organisation to help you with social media, just type the word coffee in the chat box and I can give you a call or send you an email and we can make a time for a chat. I'm really happy to talk to any of you who need a little bit more support in these webinars. But if there's no questions, then we might sign off. But yeah, thank you very much again to all of you who have joined us today. I really appreciate the time that you've given and I really appreciate the support. So yeah, thank you. Thank you to those of you who are saying thank you. Karen, Callum, Michaela, Karen, Donna, Kerry, Francis. Francis is a coffee. Excellent. I'll pop you a line. An email. Gary, thank you. Kerry, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, have a great week, everyone, for the rest of it. And I will talk to you soon. Yeah, I'll talk to you all soon. Okay, bye.